I'm BJ Jones. I'm the artistic director of Northlight Theater, and today we're going to talk about our second production of the season, Mr. Dickens' Hat. And with me today is the author of the piece, Michael Hollinger, and that's a good thing, and our director, David Catlin. There you go. We're working. I'm hoping this is working. These are new. Let me get my 6-year-old grandson in here. He'll show me how to make Zoom work. How are you guys?
Doing all right, hunkered down, but keeping the faith for the future.
I know. This is the strangest thing ever, isn't it?
It is some small consolation that we know that the theaters in Elizabethan England closed down during the plague, and yet they came back with vigor. And so, we keep hope alive, right?
Yeah. Well, now I'm assuming we can all see each other right now. Is that right?
That's correct.
Good. Oh, that's good. So I thought what we talk about today, if it's okay with you, is how this thing all came about, and I'm not quite. We have differing memories about it, Michael. So I seem to remember that I first heard the title Mr. Dickens' Hat from another director, but you have a different thought about that. So was it your agent or something mentioned it to me?
You might have gotten hit from both sides, or it might have been just kind of a lucky coincidence at the time, because my agent did send out a little prospectus that I had made up to say, hey, here's a thing. And out of the blue, I got a call from you, who I hadn't heard from in a long time.
Yes.
And, so it was, however it happened.
Yeah.
It was lucky timing, and your enthusiasm for a title was palpable.
Well,
trusting.
But what excited me about the piece is that it was about tangentially about Charles Dickens and the time period. And I think what I did was ask you for some kind of thumbnail or a couple of paragraphs to tell us what the story was about. But when I immediately, as I started to read that, I thought of David Catlin because of his work at Looking Glass, and because the piece invited that kind of wild and fun theatricality. And so that's when I reached out to David as well. And because you've worked on Dickens before, right, David?
Yeah, we did Hard Times down at Looking Glass. We did it a few times, actually. And it just made me fall in love with Dickens. And literally, when you sent me Michael's script, I even just the very, very first stage directions were so exciting to me. The way that it's something like 6 actors play all of these roles, and the whole play emerges from so very little, and there's singing and comedy and all of this sort of need for both the people who are making it, the actors and the director and the designers to engage their imaginations, but also for the audience to do it. And so there was just something about it immediately that I think I was a half a page in. I was like, this is I want to do this. I want to work on it.
Yeah, you were born for it. It's kind of so I'm going to take full credit for being inspired. That's the way it is. You're an inspired choice for it.
I think there's a genetic link between the folks working at Looking Glass and my own background. As you know, I've done a lot of work at Arden Theater Company in Philadelphia, which is formed by Northwestern grads, and the genetic link between the Arden and Looking Glass, I feel like that sense of theater as an open-handed experience that says, here we are present in this space right now to tell a story together and to make it happen. Not that it's without bells and whistles, but that there's a transparency to the performance that makes the performers the event.
Yeah.
I felt like right away, David and I, when we met and started workshopping the piece a year ago, like right away, that just felt very apparent. Like we understood that basic vocabulary.
Yes.
And I did see your production of Hard Times, and that's what actually kind of made me think of Michael's creation and the fact that those two worlds, they're not two worlds, they're actually one world. I thought they were completely in sync aesthetically and joyously. The other thing that intrigued me about it, we frequently try to do, a lot of theaters have a production of the Christmas Carol that they do every year.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, and everybody has their own adaptation and their own style. I kind of at Northlight we try and though we do like to do a holiday piece, we kind of want it to be something that is joyous, that honors the season, but doesn't have any particular kind of religious leaning. And this does have, even though it is the dark, it does have the dark kind of aura of all of Dickens' work.
Yeah.
It does have a kind of a joyous feel to it, and a sort of holiday spirit. One of the things I find interesting about this is, Michael, that it is kind of feminist. It's and here you are writing a piece that is, I think, quite feminist. Actually, can we talk about that?
Sure. Well, I've always been a big fan of women, and I'd say as characters in my plays, I've always been attracted to the strong female character because I think in our world they begin as underdogs, and I'm attracted by that notion. I think we get on the side very quickly of a woman in a man's world fighting great odds, and Dickens, interestingly enough, has some very striking female characters, but it's true that his young men carry the weight as heroes, and his young women, very often, he doesn't make them nearly as dimensional or interesting. He'll make them very pure, as a character in the play says, very pure and very good, and a little perfect, but not striving and working against the great odds that sometimes his famous male characters are, his Oliver Twists and David Copperfields and those. So I really wanted to focus on a young woman, a girl of about 12 in this story, because I feel like to be young, to be female, to be poor is to be under great pressures, even more so in the time period of the play as now, and that those pressures are helpful dramatically and theatrically because we've got somebody to root for. We want to see her win.
You're also a composer, and when David mentioned that there is music involved, David, can we talk about how you've taken the musical themes that Michael's written along with the lyrics and how you're going to theatricalize that as well, depict that?
Sure. The music is fantastic. It's in the spirit of carols, but they're of holiday carols, but they are some of them just have these really great driving rhythms that there's this great chase scene towards the end of the play and on a train trestle bridge, and there's something about both the drive of the song, but the kind of repetition that feels train-like, and you can just so easily see the visual storytelling happening around it, and underneath the songs, that it becomes this really almost kind of cinematic scoring for what's happening. And then there's also some carols that are joyous and heartfelt. The play itself, like Dickens, Michael is tapping into this really big-hearted world. Beej, you mentioned that there's some dark edges, and that is part of it too, right? The fullness of the human experience is both the kind of joy and steadfast hope that our characters have, but it's also kind of that loneliness and despair that they must push through, and all of that just feels very vivid and true in this. And the music is a great underscoring to that. So it has moments of where the music is just really intimate and sad, and then again these moments where it is just big and epic and sweeping in a way that you can just, it feels like we're experiencing the story in 70 millimeter, which is a funny reference to say for a live theater event, but there is something just that gets so, the story just kind of expands to this big kind of epic chase scene, and then there's these other moments, there's these just moments of delicacy where this lonely Kit, who's our heroine, has just left her father, and she's feeling lonely and cold in the kind of Dickensian, the literal London winter, with only a blanket to keep her warm, and she just has this memory of her mother, or this thought of her, and her mother just kind of holding her as these singers in the background are singing this just kind of beautiful, beautiful little song. So I just love that it has all of that, and there's something about the music that Michael's written that captures all of it, that captures the dynamics and isn't just kind of a single tone. Sometimes when we think of carols, we think of a particular carol that has kind of a same sort of sound. Well, the score of this whole piece is so beautifully varied and different. I'm so excited, and we're in the midst of casting, and we did some workshops, and some of the actors that we have had working on it are just have these beautiful just voices that are so at times big when we need them to be, and at other times just so pure and unadorned and beautiful.
Let's talk about the process, that workshop process leading up to what we did as a reading, that interplay reading, because I think it's interesting. A lot of people don't know how that sort of evolves. Can we talk about that? First of all, we gathered some talent, some actors that we thought were appropriate for the roles. And then you got in a room with them. And taught them some music. Let's talk about that.
Well, I'll say, the casting this is not easy because the actors do have to be very able singers. There's 6 actors who play a multitude of roles, so they need to be able to shift accents and type and class and character and scale, and also have a very specific voice range and be able to sing in harmony from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 voice pieces. So it's a quite threading the needle to do that. And you folks at Northlight and with David really nailed it, both in the workshop that we did in 2019, and then later on, well, I guess then later on the reading also that we had. Terrific in terms of casting those folks. The workshop was a whirlwind, right, David? We worked for 4 days to kind of basically tear the play to pieces. And I say that in the fondest possible way because I love workshops, and my whole interest is just saying, no, not that. What about this? Well, not that. What about this? Go back to the hotel room and work for several hours, including working on some new songs and things. I have my script right here, actually, from that workshop, and those uninitiated can see all the colored pages are representing different days of rewrites, so we don't lose our minds as we're trying to figure out, wait, which page 48C is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, all the scribbled notes and commentary in the score. Nothing is more exciting to me than knowing that a bunch of actors are waiting to get the new pages and for us to figure out what the play is.
I think as actors, one, I just want to say, you know, we had some extraordinary actors, and you're right that the what is demanded of them is there is a wide variety from the singing, from the ability to shift kind of seamlessly in between many and varied characters to keep them very distinct, to the comedy. You need a sense of clown and joy to play these characters, but you also need this kind of deep soulfulness to as well. And just to say that we found them, we found actors who are capable of all of that, but just that I feel very lucky to be in the Chicago area. But we just have a tremendous pool of actors to choose from. There are a lot of incredibly talented and variously talented actors in Chicago for us to be able to draw from. So
yeah, that's a really good point. It occurs to me, especially with new work, because we do a fair amount of new work at Northlight, and we do have terrific actors. So you end up working with some folks who really infuse and lift the material gloriously. But sometimes that work, when it transfers elsewhere, does not always have the echo of the work as it was done originally.
That's really been the grounding that then I entered the professional world through, and I'm always writing for the platonic ideal of the blueprint that will travel and be able to be realized by many, many different people, hopefully, if it's done right.
I love that, the platonic ideal.
We're always striving for it.
You also did, we did Red Herring, piece of yours, which was also wonderfully theatrical and terribly amusing, and it was a detective story, and the protagonist in that was a woman as well.
Yeah, it has some similarities. It is 6 actors, and 5 of them play multiple roles, and 1 of them does not, and that's the case in Mr. Dickens' Hat as well. So it really does put a very strong focus on that one female protagonist in a world where everybody else is malleable and constantly changing.
We talk about you talked about, David, the idea of the railroad chase and being on the railroad trestle, and boy, that just makes a director's mouth water to take a look at that and say, how am I going to make that theatrically enjoyable? Understanding part of the joy, I think, of an audience watching something like that is that they're they know it's not a railroad trestle, and yet they enjoy the trick of how you devise that theatricality. What do you think? There are a lot of ways to approach that. What kind of ideas are you messing with?
yeah, I can't say for certain exactly how that will happen. We're just putting together we've got a really great design team, and we're just at those very nascent stages. But I do think there'll be a lot of physical movement to it. I think to backtrack for a second, in theater we talk a lot about this. There's this term that's used a lot: the willing suspension of disbelief, right? That the audience, we as an audience, come together and we willingly suspend our disbelief for 2 hours and or less than 2 hours, and engage in the very particular world of each play. And there's something just incredibly beautiful about that. We do that when we read books. We willingly suspend our disbelief and we get lost in this world, but that's a solitary experience. In the theater, it's very communal, right? And so to be in a room full of people who are all saying, yes, this is a train trestle bridge, this actor is 50 feet up in the air. Yes, this other actor is falling into an icy river. I'm not spoiling anything. That maybe that happens, maybe that doesn't. But yes, but that could be done. It could be done physically, where we see one of the actors who has read for us, and we're really excited about is somebody that I've worked with who has a lot of physical training, and is capable of literally being lifted up into the air and could fly like a bird. It could be done in a kind of a physical way. We might come up with some kind of fun set component that feels like part of the set that Michael suggests in his stage direction is this kind of series of pipes and speaking tubes that are all around the set. The owner of the hat shop, Mr. Garbleton, with the co-owner of the hat shop with Mrs. Prattle, he has designed this series of speaking tubes that allow for them to speak to characters who are in different rooms and in the basement. And there's something about that feels both like kind of like a cage, which is a little bit of a theme in the play, but also could feel like the markings of a trestle bridge. There's something about that might suggest something that the actors could interact with. We could, because it is such an imaginative exercise, and because we as an audience and we as actors are going to be so engaged by the storytelling, we could shrink the scale and literally have small figures running across the trestle bridge chasing each other, right? So it becomes, we just shrink down in some object that almost in the way a puppet works could become that. So I don't know. I don't know exactly how that finale will, and it could be something that toggles between all of those, so that it becomes this real huge theatrical event at the climax of our story.
Wow, that sounds exciting. I love that idea. Book it.
Yeah. Well, let me just throw in there that, part of it too, I find I feel successful when I'm really influenced by the people in the room, right? So the people in the room are the designers and the cast, and what they bring into the room and their abilities will have a strong influence on the final version of the play. It will inform it. So if the actor has some physical movement ability, the actors, I may want to take advantage of that, and that becomes part of the storytelling. If somebody comes in with strong object puppet work, there may be some version that we will tap into those unique particular skills, and the play will, to some extent, the staging of it, the staging language will form around that. So I'm excited, and have been excited by all the actors we've gotten to work with, some of the actors we've been talking about working with. So it's
so I think I did this backwards, because I didn't give us the elevator pitch for this, the opportunity for the elevator pitch. Michael, in less than 90 seconds, what's the setup?
London, 1865, the hat shop where Charles Dickens has his hats made, which is run by an important figure in his life, holds a hat that Dickens destroyed when he was in a train wreck earlier that year and saved people by bringing them water in this hat. I have a version of it right here.
Aha!
The hat exists in the shop as a note that it's a distinguished hat shop, but also that beneath our hats we are all the same, and that Dickens's love of humanity reflects the hat shop owner's belief that we are all the same. There is a child named Kit whose father is imprisoned for debt. She is working here at the hat shop to pay off her father's debts, and she will discover in the course of the play that things are not as they seem, and that there are wrongs to be righted if she's going to ever get her father released from prison and herself be allowed to go back to school and live a life that's not a life of servitude. People sing, people run, train wrecks. How am I doing?
You're doing great. That's great.
Also,
And
really, the only thing I would add to that is it's really funny. There are the characters are really fun. Michael has an ear for and a pen for comedy that is just fantastic. The characters are just vivid. They're filled with strength, but also the heavies, the antagonists are despicable and yet have some room for redemption. The kind of antagonist sidekick is deliciously a great ne'er-do-well who is not the brightest crayon in the box, and he is just so fun. Both the language, the situations that he's created are a blast and really funny, which is, you know, part of Dickens. He'll lay that up against the kind of dark, lonely, isolated sadness.
I think that's
that too.
everything you say there, David, was for me a kind of touchstone in the writing, is that Dickens is a writer of such incredible contrasts. He's seeking vividness and buoyancy in life. He's also seeking starkness and stillness. He wants to evoke joy, and one of the ways he evokes joy is by contrasting it with, you know, the brutality that life can sometimes have. This little quote that I put on the title page of the play was kind of, you know, I also wood burned on the inside of my head. This is from Dickens' Pickwick Papers. "There are dark shadows on the earth, but its lights are stronger in the contrast."
Yeah.
And I think we never feel so warm as when we've come out of a blustery evening, or when we're looking, you know, when we've been through a harsh experience. And that really has been, for me, the guide. This is a season that we're looking at that is cold and it's dark. We lose our light, we lose our heat. And where do we find our warmth? Through other humans.
But I would argue that makes this piece perfect for the time that we're going through right now, because this is a kind of dark time, but we will emerge from it stronger and braver and more compassionate, I would think.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately, specifically because of that longing to connect.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to open, first preview is November 19th, and opening is November 27th, and it goes to the week after Christmas. And I want to thank David Catlin, Michael Hollinger, I'm sorry, why do I keep doing that?
No, you were right, Hollinger.
Hollinger, I am right. I know you corrected me, and now I'm totally sensitive. Well, you can call me Jonas. Thank you guys for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
It's been a great pleasure.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Bye.
Let's get in the room.